All right, good evening. The time is 6:49 p.m. It is May 17th, Monday, May 17th, 2021. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Argyle ISD Board of Trustees. At this time, we will determine if a quorum is present.
Leona McDade, present.
Jeff Williams, present.
Richie Deffenbaugh, present.
Brad Lowry, present.
Craig Hawksworth, present.
John Day, present.
And I, Sam Slayton, am present. At this time, we will canvass the results of the May 1st, 2021 School Board Trustee election.
In place 4, Richie Deffenbaugh received 472 votes for 64.75% of the total. And Phyllis Clark received 257 votes for 35.25%. That's with all 6 precincts reporting. Dr. McDade, Dr. Leona McDade, for place 5 received 601 votes for 100% of the vote. So Mr. Deffenbaugh retains his seat and Dr. McDade retains her seat.
Okay. We now want to install our elected trustees.
Well, yeah, accept the results, the
Okay.
official
So,
results.
we got-
Make a motion to
Yeah.
accept the
All right.
official
I
results.
will make a motion to approve the official results of the May 1, 2021 School Board Trustee election.
I'll make that motion.
All right. That is Mr. Lowry motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Mr. Williams second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Congratulations, Dr. McDade,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Deffenbaugh. All right. So now, all right. Now we will install our newest
You want to
elected
stay or here?
trustees. You have to confront and center.
Pictures.
Pictures. Are you taking a picture?
Jeff, now you're still behind me. I'm like over there.
There's an extra post right here. That's what.
Yeah, so it's not my fault.
Mm-hmm. Right. President, vice president.
And Gerald, I was telling Brad that the boys got cleaned up by 16
I'm
strokes.
getting
That was
concerned
everyone.
about all those people.
That's crazy. We're gonna be like 5 minutes. We're just gonna go to the bathroom now.
Okay.
We'll go to closed session for 5 minutes. We'll come right back in.
Then we're gonna go back to closed session?
Yeah, afterwards.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And I told Paul we'd get him in later.
If you got those certificates that you were supposed to sign.
I haven't been given anything.
Okay, well, I've signed them.
Thanks, Greg.
I, Leona McDade, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office Argyle ISD Board of Trustees and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the laws of the United States and of the state. So help me God. I, Richie Deffenbaugh, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
All right, at this time, I will entertain a motion for nomination for president of school board.
I nominate, Mr. Sam Slade.
A second.
Oh, we have a motion by Mr. Lowry. We have a second by Mr. Hawksworth. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you all, appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
All right. At this time, I will entertain a motion to install vice president of the board.
I'll make a motion, we install Dr. John Bitter as vice president.
All right, Mr. Hawksworth has a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. McDade, second. Any further discussion?
I'd open it up to anybody who would like to have the position. Of course, you know, there's a lot, we've been on this seats for a while, so Jeff or Richie or Dr. McDade, I'm happy to,
Not
Well, it's not me.
no, well, you're already know.
I'm kidding, I'm kidding.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations, Dr. Bitter. All right, I will entertain a motion to install secretary of the board.
I'll nominate Craig Hawksworth.
Mr. Williams makes a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
Mr. Lowry, second. Any further discussion or rebuttal?
What he said.
Okay. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. At this time, we are going to take a brief 5-minute recess, and then we will come back into open session. So, the time is 6:56 p.m.
Oh, that's
All right,
sweet.
7:03 p.m. We have returned from a brief recess. All right, at this time we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. We'll have a moment of silence at this time. All right. We now have a lot of special recognition, so we're really excited to have you all here tonight. So we'll let Dr. Wright get this started.
Okay, we're going to start by recognizing and honoring our Argyle ISD Police Department. I'm sure that all of you are aware that we do not have school resource officers in Argyle ISD. We have our own separate autonomous Argyle ISD Police Department, which is headed up by Chief Paul Kearney. So if you would come up, Chief Kearney, we want to, in honor of National Police Week, which has actually passed. It was May 9 through 15, but this is the first board meeting we've had. Want to tell you how much we appreciate what you have done for Argyle ISD and continue to do for Argyle ISD. And we have Sergeant Bob Mastapero, who is also our canine handler, and Officer Joe Marcello. So we appreciate all of our ISD PD officers, and we also have 2 part-time officers.
Yes, we do.
So
Thank you,
thank
Chief.
you very much.
If I may, it's been a hard year across the country for policing. A lot of departments feel like they do not get the support that they need from their leadership to do their job. This is not one of them. We have gotten nothing but support from you all. We're extremely grateful for that support, even sometimes in the last couple of years where we've had to make some extremely difficult decisions and do some very difficult things. We've had nothing but support. We can ask for no more. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
We are so very proud of our UIL academic team and our UIL academic competitors. And tonight we want to honor some of these. If Kimberly Cass would come in, she is our UIL coordinator for the high school. So she's going to introduce the high school UIL academic coaches who are here tonight, and then she's going to tell you a little bit about what's gone on this year in 2021 with the UIL academic team, where they are with district, with region, and now at the state level, and then I have certificates for them.
Right. We want to thank you so much for recognizing these students. It's been a very unusual year, and you can see they're still coming in. We had a lot qualify for state. We had some very unusual competitions. In fact, we were the host school for ESC 11 North for the region contest and also the state contest, because they did not host at their normal Texas Tech and UT Austin. So different sites around the state were host schools. Behind me are a lot of coaches and students who both qualified for state, obviously medaled at the region contest, which we won, medaled at the district contest, which we won. And I'd like to kind of introduce them, and if they're coaches here, maybe they can say just a little bit about them. I'm going to start with accounting. So if you're from accounting, can you just kind of wave or step forward? Mr. Rahman couldn't be here, but Mr. Rahman coaches our accounting team, our computer apps team, and our computer science team. And our accounting team was the first place in state. Nate Atwood was second, Jorge third. Paige, who's not here tonight, was fourth, And then we had Rylan as another member of the team contributing to points for that. So we're really, really happy about that.
We want to congratulate our
Congratulations.
first place accounting team. We are very proud of you. Specify all four of your names on it. Congratulations.
All balance. No liabilities.
Computer apps, I think we have a few from computer applications. Jada ended up 6th. I don't think Jada's here tonight, but we have Holden. And then Amanda Cheatham was also competing at state for that event. And we're really, really proud of that. They don't have a team event. They go individual on that one. And they did very well. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
And then Mr. Rahman also coaches computer science. And Jasmine Ball and Vidit Tripathi, we had our 4th and our 6th place state champions. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Jasmine and Vidit. That certificate's got both your names on it for the team.
And I think we have Coach Perkins here who can represent our math events. Oh, we're here. Okay. Calculator applications. You want to call them up?
I got it. Yeah, make sure I'm good. James Reagan finished 3rd. Jasmine Ball finished 5th. Vidit finished 6th in the state, and Caroline finished 8th. Caroline Deffenbaugh. And they got a 2nd place overall in the state, and that's a really good finish for those.
That's for your team. Congratulations.
In number sense, can I do them all?
Sure.
In number sense, Vidit and Eli tied. Vidit Tripathi and Eli Valentino tied for 3rd place in the state. And then Mark Castle is here and was 10th. And Evan Harbaugh's in baseball, he was 8th. And they were a 1st place state champion team in number sense.
So they're team certificates, so y'all feel okay to come up and get them as a team.
Yeah,
Eli,
that's a
Vidit
team
has it, Eli.
certificate.
Represent your team. And then in the mathematics contest, again, state champions, 1st place as a team. Vidit Tripathi was 2nd place individually. Eli Valentino was 9th. James Reagan was 10th. And Jasmine Ball was 11th.
Eli, come up and get it. Oh, yeah, you got it. Good job.
Those 3 teams, there's not a senior at all, so we hope to see you again next year doing sort of the same things. But thank y'all so much for supporting all that.
Thank
you
you.
do.
Thank you,
Thank
Coach
you.
Perkins.
As the awards continue, we have Ms. Hadley here with the literary criticism team.
I am pleased to introduce you to our state silver medalist literary criticism team. I have senior Gracie Hurst. She was 1st place in the state in 4A for literary criticism. I have Catherine Atkins is also a senior, and Abby Adams, and they tied for 10th place. And then our junior Avery Clayton earned 7th place this year. Thank you.
This is a certificate for 2nd place team. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We're very proud of you.
And I think we have one representative from the 1st place science team here. Isabel? The science team took 1st in 4A, and we had some great performances from the students and a very high score. I think our team score was, 3rd high overall in the state, I believe. So even though we were 4A, an excellent job by that science team. Congratulations.
Great.
So we have Lauren Allen, Danny Roberts, Isaac Fisher, and Isabel Gilbert. Okay, give this to Wabeling. This has number sense, but that's science, right? That's supposed to be science. We'll get you another one.
Miss Short is here for journalism, but before that, I want to let our speech debate qualifiers, they compete next week. And right now, I think we're 7 points behind Lindale. So there's a little bit of pressure on the speech debate, but they've got this. So if you want to introduce your kids that are going to compete next week.
Hi, I'm Jessica Reynolds, the speech debate coach. We are competing next week. Hopefully, bring it at home for you guys. We are really hopeful. But first, we had Nick Loveday qualify in persuasive speaking. He is our first ever in Argyle's history to qualify in this event, so that's pretty exciting. Nick. Next, we have Joseph Thompson, who qualified in Lincoln Douglas debate.
Congratulations, Nick.
Then we have, I don't know where he is, Billy Michael, who qualified in informative speaking. And then the last one competing for us next week is Jackson Barnes in poetry.
Congratulations.
Oh, that's for CX.
Oh, wait, okay, Jackson is poetry. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And, wait,
don't
you
leave
got,
out.
okay.
And
Then Billy Michael and Tristan Ball.
yeah, earlier this year we competed at CX debate, and Billy Michael and Tristan Ball, they
It's backwards, because this is Billy Michael's. You've got two, one together and then one individual. Okay, congratulations.
They competed at CX debate and got us some academic points. They got 5th place as a team. Billy was the 2nd speaker in the state, and Tristan was the 5th speaker in the state. So we are very proud of them.
And now I'm going to turn this over to Miss Short. She's going to talk about all of our journalism events that are going on and the state accolades for that team.
Are we doing Izzy Wolf too while you're in here?
Oh, I guess
Her family's not in here.
We'll bring her family in.
Okay, we'll go ahead with Miss Short.
Okay, I'm going to talk about just a few things. First off, UIL Film actually contributes to UIL Academics, so I wanted to recognize we had 2 teams, crews that made it to the state finals. We had a 5th place narrative fiction film, and that was Ryan Ruth and Sloan Dial and Josh Fritz were on that team, and they got 5th place at state. And the name of the film was Senseless. And then the other film was Going Live, which was tied into our live broadcast. Sloan Dial was the director for that, and there was quite a large crew on that. 2 of them are here, Riley Hawk and Delaney Lekowit, and the rest of the crew couldn't make it tonight. But that film took us 16 weeks and about 5 hours per night, sometimes 10 hours per night, plus all the editing. And just the whole process of the live stream. So we're very, very proud of the film, but it was the 3rd place state champion for documentary film. Okay, and then the other journalism stuff, we did have one state qualifier in the writing events for academics, which was Sarah Crowder, and she got 7th place in both of her events. And then for ILPC, that's the Interscholastic League Press Conference for Journalism. It kind of it coincides with UIL, but they don't bring in the UIL points. It's just more accolades for the journalism writers in a whole lot more events than what UIL actually offers. And I'm not going to go over the list, but suffice it to say we had more winners this year than we've ever had before. We had 29 that placed in the top 3 in their categories. We had 2 tops in Texas, which is the highest honor you can get for the state of Texas. And all 3 of these girls contributed to that in some way, shape, or form as well. So it was a stellar year for journalism and film.
I have a certificate here for the Division I state film for Sarah Crowder, Trinity Flatton, and Nicholas West.
Yeah, no one else can make it.
And then the narrative state finalist, Sloan Dahl and Josh Fritz and Ryan Ruth.
That's Sloan. She'll take them.
Okay, and then documentary state finalists, Sloan Dahl, Ella Rader, Delaney Lekowitz, Riley Hawk, Bobby Volling, and Nick West. Congratulations.
Hi, I'm also the theatrical design coach or sponsor, whatever you want to call it. This year we had 2 qualifiers, one in marketing design and one in hair and makeup. TJ Atkins placed 7th in marketing overall in the state. And Izzy Wolf was our first ever state champion in hair and makeup design.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Very proud of you, Izzy.
I think there's one for you too.
Yep.
And TJ, congratulations.
Congratulations.
We're very proud of you.
We want to thank all of you for your support. And like I said, we've got those 4 kids competing next week, and we hope to.
Now, who's still competing? Jackson Barnes.
Jackson, Billy,
Tristan?
Joe, and Nick. No, Tristan's not.
Oh, Nick?
Yes.
Hey, well, good luck to all of you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank y'all. Congratulations.
They didn't know he was awarded.
And we'll start with Lady Eagles track next. Yes.
Yeah.
No, first. Oh, wait, I'm not sure.
Yes.
I thought first.
No, hold on. You talking about Nate?
For accounting.
Nate got 2nd overall in state.
In accounting second?
Yeah.
But the team got
The team got first. Right.
Thank you, Dr. Wright and school board members.
Just go ahead and share about the girls track, and then I have certificates.
Yes, ma'am. Just a couple highlights from this year. I'll go over team recognition and then individual. We were district champions with 194 points, area champions with 146 points, regional runners-up to the defending state champions. And out of 53 teams who pointed at state, we ranked 11th, finishing with 19 points in 5 events. We set 4 new school records in the 200 meters, the 300 hurdles, the 4x1, and the 4x2. Girls who could not make it tonight for scheduling conflicts, I'll touch on them. Junior Sarah Runyon amassed in her freshman and junior years 5 district championships as an individual. This year she was district, area, and regional champion in the 100 hurdles. Also a regional qualifier for the long jump and 300 hurdles, as well as a district champion, area champion for the 4x100 meter, and state qualifier for the 4x100 meter. Julia Patterson, who's a sophomore, was the district and area champion in the 200 meters, runner-up in the regional meet, and placed 8th in state and 3rd in the 4x4. And we're excited to have her back. Kira Inman, who is also a sophomore, was part of the 4x2 record-holding team for Argyle. Also the district champ in the 100 meter and area champ in the 100 meter. Regional qualifier, 3rd place, and was part of the 4x1 and 4x4 teams at the state meet. Trinity Carter, also a sophomore, was part of our 4x1 team as well as our 4x2 team. And we're excited to have those underclassmen back. I have my 3 seniors behind me. I'll start with Courtney Slater. She was the district area champion in the 300 hurdles, the regional runner-up, the school record holder now, and placed 6th at state. She's also a regional qualifier for the long jump, an area qualifier for the 100 meter hurdles, and placed 3rd in state at the 4x400 meter. Out of prelims, we were about 13 seconds off from qualifying time. In a matter of 24 hours, we managed to shave 13 seconds off, which is something to be marveled at, particularly when you have one lap to do that in. Savannah Underwood, also a senior, she has been part of our relays for 4 years now. She was part of our 4x1, 2, and 4, which held district and area championships as well as regional runners-up, and she placed 3rd in the 4x400 meter and 7th in the 4x100 meter at state. And then Reagan Ruffner, district area champion and regional runner-up in pole vault, and placed 3rd in state with a height of 12.6. She will be going on to continue her jumping career at Texas A&M in the fall. Savannah will be going to University of Arkansas, and Courtney will be going to Texas Tech.
Congratulations, Reagan.
Thank you.
And then the 4x400 relay team, Courtney's here.
Yeah, 2 of them right here.
Okay. That's the 4x100 relay team. And the 300 hurdles. And Sarah Runyon, 100 hurdles. And Jalal Patterson.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
And we have boys track and field. And Coach Styron's going to tell you a little bit about their season.
Okay, so this year we actually had a really, really good season. We won district with 34 different kids scoring at the varsity level. We went on then to become area champs and regional champs. We took a total of 25 guys to regionals this year. Then when we went to, we qualified 4 separate events for the state meet this year, and 7 athletes, all 7 of them are behind me right here. We scored in all 4 events, and I'm not sure that that's ever been done before. I'd have to double check on that. But I want to tell you, I want to say this. Mitchell Thompson got 7th in the pole vault at the state meet. Sheridan Wilson was 6th place in the discus at the state meet.
Congratulations, very proud of you.
The
Sheridan,
next 4 guys,
congratulations, Sheridan.
Thank you,
We're
appreciate it.
very proud of you.
Thank you.
the next 4 guys, Jamel Felton, Riley Page, Hayden Stewart, and Jet Copeland set records in the 4x1 and the 4x2, talking about school records. The 4x1 finished 6th at the state meet, and the 4x2 of the same 4 finished 5th. So that's Jamal Felton, Riley Page, Hayden Stewart, and Jet Copeland.
Congratulations to all of you for your performance.
Congrats.
And then last, but certainly not least, is Caleb Murdoch, who was state champion in the pole vault this year. He went through the entire season never losing a meet.
Wow.
Never losing a meet. State champion Caleb Murdoch in the pole vault.
Very impressive. Congratulations.
I'd also just like to thank the board again for recognizing all of our athletes. It's a tough task, I know, but it's one that all these kids appreciate, and I know I do too. Thank you very much.
Great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Congratulations.
Awesome.
And we have wrestling. Coach Morris, would you like to tell us a little bit about these gentlemen, and then we have some certificates for them?
Yes, want to say thank you to Dr. Wright, to the board, to Coach Rogers, for everybody on the support on this season. We didn't know if wrestling was going to happen. They kept moving the season and where we were going to be, and the fact that UIL put it in the spring and changed the format on us changed a whole lot of how we did our normal practice and ramping up to practice, and we had to fight through a bunch of things. These two guys are the epitome of the team in getting through, whether it was an injury or not quite sure how to deal with training and all of that kind of stuff. We ended up with 2 state placers. So we'll start with Jax. Jax Ernest was second time at state tournament. They moved our state tournament down to 1 day instead of 2. So Jax was our 182. And the way they made it work was, instead of a true double elimination, if you lost in the first 2 rounds, you could only work your way back to 5th. And you had to do that by winning the next 3 matches in a row. And that's exactly what Jax did. We're very proud of how he represented us at state.
Congratulations. Thank you. We're very proud of you.
This was Cullen DeVries, fourth time at state. As a freshman, he was our alternate at 170. As a sophomore and junior, he was the 170. He was 3rd place as a sophomore and a junior, only losing to the eventual state champion at state. And this year was his year that he punched all the way through and got gold. 4 years at 170 and 4 years at state. It just doesn't happen very much, guys. Come to me.
We're very proud of you. Congratulations.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations, guys.
And Mr. Bird and Dan.
Basketball? Just saw what's his name. He got player of the year.
Would you like to speak a little bit about the band and the accomplishments of the band this year, and particularly the wind ensemble and symphonic band, and then also the middle school band?
Middle school had a solo contest tonight, so the middle school students are right now at Argyle Middle School doing their solo competition. All 4 ensembles of the band program received sweepstakes again. The wind ensemble and symphonic band at high school, and then the honor winds and symphonic band at the middle school level. Unique year, we all submitted virtual concerts, so we all did recordings on stage, and we submitted, and for those of you who keep records, like me, this was the 20th year in a row that we received sweepstakes for the band program. In order to receive sweepstakes, you have to make a 1 in marching, and a 1 in concert, and a 1 in sight reading. So it doesn't happen in just over 1 contest, so it happens in multiple contests. It was the 20th year in a row for Argyle. So congratulations. In front of you is Katie Atkins, our current drum major and senior graduating, and our next year's drum majors, which hopefully you'll see a lot of, Mr. Jorge Terrazas and Nick Leslie.
I want to give you this certificate for superior rating of sweepstakes. Congratulations. We're very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, we have the consent items. No one signed up for public
We
speaking.
don't have any public
No, we
forum?
do not. First time, long time.
Okay.
All right.
We need to go.
Thanks, Chief. Have a good night. All right, AISPTA in the amount of $3,861 for the purchase of an ice machine in the AIS Teachers Lounge. The first family, $5,000, given to AHS Challenge Day Club to be used for leadership camps, PALS team building, CDC and PALS shirts for students, and miscellaneous other club expenses. AEBC, $3,205 for the purchase of 20 new bars for AHS weight room, for a grand total of $12,066. All right. Does anyone have any questions on any of the items on the consent agenda? Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll move that we
Dr.
approve the consent agenda.
All right, Dr. McDade, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Lowry, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. We'll move on to construction report.
Okay, Jeff Cohen isn't here, but we've recorded his report.
Okay.
So, Mr. Heron will be pulling it up. He is at the Flower Mound Town Council meeting tonight for the follow-up to the Flower Mound P&Z meeting last Monday night.
Regarding the new elementary?
No, right. Well, those 3 items, yes, on the elementary. The masonry wall, the extra parking, and the
Retention.
dry retention pond. Those 3.
Tile. This is the construction update for the Argyle High School Phase 2 project for May 2021. On the site, we continue to install irrigation, tip irrigation, hydromulch, and sod as areas permit. Also, sidewalks continue to be installed again as areas permit. The photo on the lower left, we're looking at the sidewalk between the new gym and the new fine arts band hall wing. The picture in the middle, we're looking at a sidewalk that they've started to form that runs along the road that connects the front drive to the back drive. And in the photo on the right, we can see they've formed and got reinforcing installed for the ramp, for the accessible route, which will take us up to the back of the auditorium. In the fine arts wing, auditorium wing, we've got wall paint is beginning on the lower walls. We've got the low wall framing installed for the control booth and for the low walls for the upper seating levels, as you can see in the photo on the right. In the lobby area, you can see they are continuing to get the beam wraps installed on the wood beams that run through the lobby and out into the covered porch area outside. That's the photo center bottom. The upper photo in the middle is the black box theater. You can see the rigging installed. They've got some temporary work lights hung, and they will be installing the theatrical lighting, curtains, and other equipment in the next month. In the lobby, the floor tile will commence sometime in the next 2 weeks, and in the auditorium itself, we will see wall tile start sometime in the next 3 weeks. In the new gym, the tile in the gym lobby and wall paint are 94% complete. We've also got ceilings installed and acoustic wall treatment installed, as you can see in the photos on the left. In the middle upper, you can see a photo of the wrestling room, the mat room. That room has been completed, final paint installed. We still have some construction material stored in there. But the outdoor finish will be the wrestling mat, which we've got delivery scheduled for the first week of school, so that we don't do any damage to it while we do punch list and wrap up all the other areas of construction this summer. In the photo on the right, this is the visitor's locker room that was added to our project. So this is underneath the visitor side bleachers that we're looking at. And you can see the plumbing rough-in has been installed, awaiting inspection. The photo center bottom, you're looking at the home side bleachers, and you can see the guardrails and handrails have been installed, awaiting seating to be installed in the next couple of weeks to start. In the classroom edition, the connector corridors are completing. As you can see, photo in the left and center are both of those hallways. They are finishing installation of the window frames and glass. They are 85% complete. The flooring in the classroom wing has been completed up to these corridors. So as you can see, the photo in the lower right is our first floor classroom wing looking down the hall. All the flooring has been installed up to the end of that and stop just shy of these connector corridors as they finish up. Then follow them and finish flooring in those areas. Final coat of paint has been installed on walls on both floors. And the doors have been installed. Interior glazing will start, as well as Division 10 specialties will begin installation, so that we will be looking to start some final cleaning of these areas over the next 2 weeks. Outside, they are finishing up some utility installation, and then we'll see sidewalk and landscaping going in around the classroom. In the field house, we've got the ceramic tile work ongoing in the showers and lockers, as you can see in the photo on the lower right. Our wall tile is about 80% complete in the field house, and the floor tile is about 40% complete. They're continuing and wrapping up all of the overhead MEP work, mechanical, electrical, plumbing work, and getting ready for those inspections so that they can close up all the remaining ceilings and proceed to final inspections. In the photo on the lower left, you are looking at the weight room, and that ceiling has been painted, and you can see all of the overhead lighting and ductwork has been installed. Here's just a few dates that we're looking at over the next few weeks. Our furniture deliveries are scheduled to begin June 1st. We have done a punch list on the east athletic fields, the grass fields, and on the west athletic fields. They are installing sod when weather permits, and we're able to cut the sod at the farm, get it delivered for installation. In the classroom wing, they will be getting appliances and other specialties installed beginning this week in preparation for a final clean. In the auditorium, they will begin installing our AV equipment package in the next month. And in the field house, we will see the millwork delivered and installed in the next month. In the gym, we will see the seating commence by the end of May, followed up with seating in the auditorium. Look ahead, we will continue with sidewalks in all areas as they become available. We are waiting on a change to our permit for the new rear office reception that we added to the project. So as soon as we get that approval from the town, we will commence with that portion of the work. In the meantime, that has not affected any of the other portions of the work that we already had included. Seating and flooring at the Fine Arts, which is auditorium and gym, will commence in the next month. And inside the gym, they will be finishing chase around the new ductwork that comes down to serve the visitor locker room, so they'll be able to complete all of the final paint. It has been complete on 3 walls, and just lack the remaining 1. Overhead inspections at the field house will be gotten so that we can proceed to final inspections for our MEP trades. And then we will see final clean and punch list not only in the classroom addition, but also in the areas surrounding the auditorium, not the auditorium, black box, the lobby, classroom spaces in the back. Area C, our storm shelter, will be doing final clean and punch list in that area over the next month. That will be followed shortly by field house and then gym and auditorium.
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna say, if anyone has any questions, you can email Mr. Cohen.
We can.
I'm just kidding.
We can. I mean, he's probably where he can take a test.
Just kidding.
Okay, any questions? Oh, you're starting him on the, you're going ahead and starting on the admin, okay.
And the new Argyle Administration Building for May 2021. This first photo is the site as it looked prior to commencement on February 23rd. The next slide is a photo as it looks today. You can see we've got the building foundation grade ready, grade beams installed. We've got plumbing rough in and electrical rough in within the building footprint completed. The paving areas and parking areas have been put to grade, approximately 90% complete. We have our building slab itself ready to pour as soon as we're able to get concrete delivered on a day without rain. In the photo you can see we've got our structural steel on site delivered. Joist and deck are to be arriving in the next 2 weeks. We've had some brick and stone materials delivered, roof curb delivered, as well as other miscellaneous materials, plumbing, electrical, and utility. And these are being stored on site in the containers you see in these photos. Here on our schedule, you can see some projected dates versus actual dates on some selected line items. So currently, we've been making good progress in spite of the weather, keeping a little bit ahead, although the last 2 weeks and upcoming week could take away a lot of the progress we've made there with the continual rains. Here we've got a photo just showing the plumbing rough-in, electrical rough-in within the building foundation area, and this is getting ready to pour. What's next, upcoming in the next few weeks, is completing our electrical site underground, getting the gas line tapped for the new meter, pour our dumpster pad, grade beams and foundation, ready for our dock lift to be installed. We will finish filling the site, parking and paving areas to final grade in preparation for line treatment and paving. We will start our private sanitary sewer system installation. We will complete the storm drain installation. We'll get the electrical conduits for the new service to the building installed. We do hope to pour the slab this month, weather permitting. And we should get started on some line pavement, line treatment in areas of paving toward the end of the month.
All right, Dr. Wright, you have your report.
Okay. And some of the things that you're going to hear in this, we gave recognition for this evening, but our girls golf team won state this year. That was the first time in school history that had ever happened. They had been to state before, but they actually won it in a tiebreaker. They were tied after 27 holes, and they had to call the tournament. And then they went to the 5th person for the second day on our team and on Andrew's team. So first we were District 7 4A champions, and then Region 1 runner-ups, and then the state champion. Again, first time in school history. Boys golf, they played today, and they will play again tomorrow. They're currently playing in the 4A state tournament in Kyle. They won the regional and the district championship, and the varsity golf team was second at district and fourth at regional. So that's the second team. And the varsity's in first place right now in the state tournament. In tennis, the boys doubles team of Drew Van Wyck and Wade Pakin qualified for the state tennis tournament that was held will be held May 20 and 21 in San Antonio. Our softball has now made school history. They have actually won 3 rounds. They defeated Vernon to advance to the 4A Region 1 regional semifinals for the first time in school history. So this is our best performance by our girls soccer team, our girls golf team, and our softball team. They play Monahans on Friday and Saturday at Abilene Cooper High School. Baseball defeated Burke Burnett in the 4A Region 1 area playoffs, so they have won their first 2 rounds. They run a week behind the girls, and they'll play Benbrook on Friday and Saturday at Boswell High School. You saw Cullen DeVee here tonight. He's the state champion in the 5A division at state wrestling, and Zach Ernest placed 5th. He was in the 182 pounds category, and Cullen DeVee in the 170 pounds. As you saw tonight, girls track and boys track were represented here. Girls track 4A regional runners-up, and they placed 11th at the state meet. And in boys track, we had 4A regional champions, and Caleb Murdoch was the 4A pole vault champion. So you can see that in the midst of a tumultuous year, we've had a very successful year with the student performances. The 26th of May, we're having groundbreaking for the South Elementary 3. So that happens at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 26th, and we hope all of you will be able to come. That's Pogue Construction, and then Corrigan is the architect. So we'll have the gold shovels like we've had in the past. I know one year they had equipment that some of you got to drive, so we've told them you have high expectations for driving equipment. And then we're now in week 2 of having mask optional, and that's going fine. The quarantines have been returned to the parents, and the parent decides if their child's been in close contact with a positive case, whether they want to quarantine them or not. We did have 12 at high school that went virtual for the last 2 weeks after we went mask optional. Graduation, because of the weather forecast, was moved to the Gaylord, and that's at 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So the board needs to arrive at the Texas Ballroom by 7:15 tomorrow night. So as long as you're there 45 minutes ahead, you should be fine. There's convention center parking. We're still trying to get some barcodes for that, but if not, we'll cover the parking. So those are the eventful happenings that we have going on. Prom was very successful. The seniors had other events yesterday. They had baccalaureate. They had a senior, what we call a drive down memory lane. It's like a parade that takes them around the school while people wave and celebrate them. And then also the rose cutting and the senior slideshow last night. So the weather held out. It was very, very nice with no rain last night. So.
Dr. Ray, on behalf of probably Liz and I, because we're the only 2 that have seniors graduating this year, right, in this room, thank you as administration for your efforts, one, in pre-planning the fact that we could have graduation at our site, and then Mr. King, for the adjustments that you all have made have been astounding. You know, people spend years years trying to figure out one event. You guys did it in 2 days. And so thank you for doing that. I think it's going to be a great option to have it at the Gaylord. And we're not depending on the weather. So I just appreciate you all's efforts in getting this done.
Right, it's taken a lot of work. Mr. Heron's really worked on it.
Yes,
Ms.
great, thank you.
Arrington's really worked on it. We feel good about it. It's got a nice stage and a great convention center. It's actually in the convention center. Okay.
We have our vehicle replacement plan.
Yes. Mr. Rutledge will be bringing the vehicle replacement plan to you.
Good evening.
Good
How are
evening.
y'all folks this evening?
Okay,
Good,
to
how are
see
you?
Very good. It's almost over. We made it through. Vehicle replacement plans, what I'm getting ready to present to you, has a lot to do with what I've been telling you each and every year as I do my 3 to 5 year plan on how we need to replace our aging fleet. So, thank you. Transportation industry is responsible for the safe and effective transportation of our children according to the timely inclusion of new school buses. Features and new means of improving efficiency and reducing emissions are the best interest of everyone. National Association of Directors, Pupil Transportation Service suggests the following anticipated lifetimes under normal operating conditions for different types of school buses. Type C and Type D, 12 to 15 years old. The Type C are the buses that we mostly have here in our district. There's the wheels that are in front of the driver, just like you'd have in your car. Type A and Type B. Type A is our smaller 14-passenger vehicle. We've got a couple of those, but most of our vehicles are Type C school buses. One of our oldest buses is a 2003 Bluebird bus. Needs a new motor. To replace that motor, it's $35,000. To replace the bus is $103,000. That bus has 86,000 miles on it, and it's been in the shop more than it's been transporting our students with special needs. Bus 26, 17 years old. The floor's gotten rotten on that. It's really mushy near the back of it. Cost to repair the floors, $6,000. Got 113,000 miles on it, and it's $105,042 to replace that school bus. We got a 16-year-old school bus, bus 102, 163,000 miles. We are using it presently on routes. Cost to replace that one's $105,042. Next one's a 16-year-old Blue International. That's also in use. It's bus 110. It's got 155,771 miles on it. And the Type A school bus I talked about earlier, this is 12 years old. It's got 204,513 miles on it. Cost to replace that one with another like model is $63,505. When we took it into the dealer for repairs, they were surprised that this bus was still running down the road based on its age and mileage. Most districts scrap them by the time before they even reach this age. So
It's 12 years old is all?
12 years old, 204,000 miles, and we use it to go. Most of the miles were picked up going back and forth to Sanger, delivering our students with special needs. The other one is bus 231, 14-passenger bus, 172,000 miles on it. It's got electrical issues. That was taken to the dealership, but they cannot determine the cause of our electrical issues. The lights don't work. If the lights do work, the headlights go out. It's got some weird short that's making it tough on the mechanics and the dealer team to figure out what's going on. The cost to replace this one as well is $63,505. The Suburban 557 is 19 years old, 195,605 miles. We rarely put this on the road. It's a case of emergency, in case of everything's been requested. We'll shuffle things around so this Suburban will stay locally, going from here to maybe Arlington will trust it. The steering's really loose on it, but it served its purpose at 195,000 miles and 19 years old. The cost to replace this is $37,280. This bus is still used every day. We use it to transport one of our students with special needs. Tell it needs a new paint job. It's about $6,000 to repaint this vehicle, $37,280 to replace it. We plan to go ahead and sand it and paint it and keep it for local stuff, maintenance, or our needs to pick up parts in Fort Worth or something like that. But we hate to send it out in its current condition to represent our school district. Bus replacement cycle is based on the following. 12 years is the limit for buses on daily route service. At this age, equipment becomes a spare bus. At 150,000 miles, it becomes a candidate for replacement. 15 years will be the age limit for the bus in our fleet to be considered a candidate for replacement. The general condition of the bus is consideration for replacement is also could be an accident or fire. It costs too much just to repair. The increased maintenance costs, once the cost of maintaining an operation bus increases to a point of excessive cost, bus is a candidate for replacement, just like the 00, that short wheelchair bus. So the replacement consists with other districts throughout the state and region. Lovejoy, Frisco, Denton use a similar type of replacement policy. I've called them, I've talked to their directors, and talked to several directors throughout the state, and I've kind of mushed all their information together to create our policy. We're right with the rest of them. Maintaining an up-to-date fleet will ensure the students and staff for Argyle ISD will ride in the school buses up to date with safety features and standards. Due for replacement this year, 200, 230, this is the ones I showed you, 232, 102, 110, 26, Suburban 556, and Suburban 557. That's that one in case of emergency. Next year we have 4 buses that will be due for replacement, and the following year we'll have an additional 3 buses and 2 Suburbans. That's all I have.
Go ahead.
The Suburbans and some of the small buses that you're using for special ed, would you tend to need less of those now that we're bringing that program in-house? At least I know maybe at least the one that goes to Sanger.
Yeah, well, we still have students go to Sanger for the DAEP program, and we will continue to have students going to Sanger for DAEP. It won't be as frequent, but we also go to the ATC, and we're trying to move that onto a shorter bus to economize our mileage.
And then what do you do with these buses if you replace them? What happens with them?
A couple of them we want to keep on hand, especially with the high school moving to the existing middle school campus. We may be able to use those to shuttle students back and forth, or the coaches may be able to shuttle back and forth to the between campuses. But we really don't want to send them out on the road as they continue to wear or do minor repairs, but anything that once it becomes a major repair, it'll be auctioned off.
Auction, okay.
Which is nothing, right?
Really,
Yeah,
based on it,
basically
you're like in
nothing.
$5,000 maybe, I think, for history.
Well, you go back to the previous slide, this one.
This right here?
There you go. My only cause for concern is knowing that the $300,000 basically puts us at a budget deficit for next year based on the bus replacements. And I completely agree with number E, or letter E, but I'm concerned whether some of these other policies are too restrictive and don't account for a perfectly running bus that just happens to be older or high mileage. And when you think about, sometimes you can sell your car and get some value for it to buy the next one, but with buses you can't do that. It's just all total cost. And so look at like bus 26, if it's replacing a floor for $12,000, it still has pretty low
6,000.
miles. How much?
6,000.
Yeah, 6,000 versus spending $103,000 to replace it. I mean, I just think the better.
Right, and we weren't going to take it out of the fleet completely. It'd be used as a spare or to shuttle the kids back and forth between the 2 campuses.
Can I ask this question differently? On his example, the bus that needed a new floor for $6,000, short of the floor, is the bus rolling?
The bus is rolling. We haven't used it because of the floor. We just feel we feel it's a safety issue. It's not safe for the kids to be on.
But what he's saying is because there's such a delta between repairing the floor and replacing the bus, why would we not consider replacing the floor and keep using that bus as long as we can?
No, and we do plan to replace that floor. It's just will not be a regular.
It's not a fleet.
Day-to-day use. It'll be used for in-district only.
Why not? If the floor is replaced.
If the floor is replaced, let me go back to it. I don't have the knowledge on top of my head. 26. It's got 113,000 at 17 years old. So it's got some older obsolete safety features. It's not up to the current standards of what buses are on the roads today. But we can use it for the shorter trips and just keep them here and around town.
It can't be a route bus though?
It can, in the event, if we actually need a bus, we can use it for a route bus. But the AC units and those type of things have all already been dated and repaired, and they don't function as well as buses that we buy today that are newer. So the complaints we get from the parents, even though AC is working perfectly well, the door opening and closing and just the basic overall design at that time, the kids are getting off the bus with the red cheeks, and the parents are complaining to us that their driver's not running the AC for their students.
So it is more than the floor.
It is more than the floor, yes, sir. It's just this is just one of the major expenses on this particular bus to take care of.
But something like that would be okay for in town.
Yes, sir, and that's our plan for right now.
Okay. Yeah, my only challenge when I was reading through these is like, I mean, I got an old car that's got 165,000 miles, and I don't give it away because it still works.
Sure,
you know?
I understand.
And we have a maintenance department and everything else, so we can keep these things running. I just would challenge the policy of after 12 years or after 150,000 miles, then we start looking to get rid of it. Versus E, if it's got issues.
Right, and we are. But our shop is doing the best it can to keep these buses rolling. Sometimes some of these buses are in the shop multiple times a month just to make sure that they'll start up. We'll get engine warning lights and these type of things that the guys have to troubleshoot. Replacing hoses is the cheap stuff, but sometimes we get into water pumps or what do they call? I just went blank. It's diesel particulate filters, like DPF filters, and then we got to bake it or replace it, and then we start getting into the thousands of dollars instead of the like 10 to 15,000 instead of just a $6,000 floor.
So is 12 years too young for a bus? I mean, you're showing us buses that are 17 years old, and technically they should have been out of service 5 years ago.
Sure, absolutely. But as fast as we've been growing, we've been using the equipment we have, and the shops are doing the best they can to keep those buses on the road. We've got all those 6 buses from the grants. We had to destroy those 6 other buses. So our fleet overall age is a younger fleet. However, we do still have some older buses in our fleet.
Is there any thoughts on, I'm not even sure what they would charge for leasing these things, but if we really only intend to use them 10 years, I wonder whether a lease program that the dealership maintains is a better alternative for us. I don't know.
We looked into that option on the white fleet once, and it was not cost effective.
Probably because there's no resale value. A lease is going to be the same as,
Some districts will do a short-term 3-4 year lease, but they're always paying for a bus.
Yeah, because
there's no resale.
Everything that we've done so far has really been to accommodate the growth, except for those 6 buses.
That is correct.
Yeah. So Liz, is there a place to buy a 3 to 5 year old bus
that came off a lease?
Came off
Maybe
a
that's
lease?
what we need to start looking at for replacement buses.
We can look, I'm not aware of one, but it may just be that we haven't looked. I don't know if Albert's aware of any. Usually the leases that I'm familiar with are lease purchase buses, because typically you do plan to keep a bus for much longer than 3 to 5 years. And so most of the time when I've heard the lease in conjunction with the bus, it is a lease purchase option where you're buying it out over so many years. And there are different things to look at. I know, everything that Mr. Rutledge has on his replacement schedule tonight is not being recommended in the action item later to be replaced. We went through, Mr. Daniel, Mr. Rutledge, and I all sat down and went through the options of, okay, these are the ones that meet the schedule, but now which ones need to be replaced right now and which ones could wait a little bit longer. It's not necessarily intended for a hard and fast rule, but more as a guide so that we don't get ourselves in trouble where all of a sudden all of our buses need to be replaced at one time, and we can't afford that. So it's more of a just kind of some sort of guide to put us on the right path of making sure that we're monitoring it. And Mr. Rutledge, he's been bringing that to our attention, every year, going, we're getting an aging fleet. Something's got to be done, and so this is kind of it. So what do we need to put in place, and what do we need to be reevaluating each time something does meet these guidelines? Does it need to be replaced? Can we keep it longer? Or maybe it could be moved to the parts program. It could be moved to something that stays in town. But y'all are all very correct.
just because it hits 150,000 miles, or just because it hits 12 years, doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be replaced right then, but it means that we need to be looking at it. And we just don't wanna be in a bind, 5 years down the road, where all of a sudden we've got 15 buses that we should have been on replacement and trying to do something about.
We have to be looking at replacement and growth in combination.
So
These statements aren't absolute.
That
Yeah.
slide that you had, that
That's-
next slide showing, so, these are just potentially, it's not what we're.
If you followed your parameters, this is what it would look like.
Okay.
And then
Correct.
the ones that would meet.
But you're only saying we're gonna do 3 for next year.
I believe there's 2 regular buses that we're recommending, one
Special.
wheelchair accessible bus and 1 Suburban, I believe, is that
So
correct?
some of these on this might go forward to the next year.
That's correct.
Okay.
Or they're used for another purpose. I think one of the buses that was on there is the bus that's just used to hold our sign right now, advertising jobs for the transportation department. It's not needed on the route, it wasn't, so there's different reasons why we may have looked at in Rule 1, we need, we're not gonna ask to replace that one right now, but we need to look at it, and it needs to be on our radar.
I would say too, if you go back one slide, to add one more. Doesn't like.
It doesn't.
Doesn't like that slide. Anyway, that one. I would even add another one on there that just said, if the technology around safety changes dramatically, that should be factored in as well, right? If it's a 12-year-old bus, but there's, the new safety features that come out, I mean, that's something we really have to consider. So I would add an F to this.
And you're looking at M&O
For this purchase, we are.
and not bond funds?
No, and, either way, we're gonna have a need for buses over the next couple of years, but
Okay.
right now, we can do the recommendation out of M&O and still have a surplus budget.
Okay.
And we are gonna need new buses, and so many, we will be able to spend that
It'll be
bond money on
used.
new buses, that are gonna be needed for growth, over the next, couple of years. So, we can do bond today and M&O later, or we could do M&O today and bond later, but because of the, hold harmless provision that was passed, and made available to the school districts, we do have a surplus right now, so that's gonna be our recommendation, is out of that.
Okay.
Curiosity question, does third party even exist anymore? I think Durham used to be
Yes.
larger.
Reliant,
As schools scale up, is that even?
Reliance operates out of, for Northwest ISD, and Northwest ISD will be taking back over their transportation services starting next school year. Louisville uses
First Student.
Thank you. And I haven't heard anything about them making a move to change. Weatherford ISD was Dallas County Schools, and now they've taken their stuff inside as well.
Just wondering, any benefits, negatives to those? I know when we were smaller, I know we used Durham.
We did use
quite some
Durham,
time
and then
ago, but
In
fact,
we
some
got
of
out of
these,
that, though, at that
some of
point, I
these
don't remember.
buses that you look at on here are original buses from the first time that we switched over. If you look back, you'll see some of them are 04 or 05 buses, but it was much more economical to take it in-house than it was to keep using Durham.
A lot of districts have done that, haven't they?
Yes, they're moving that way. They will sell you make it very cheap when they come in. They'll buy all your fleet, so it's very cheap originally, and then it makes it very cost prohibitive to replace that fleet.
You gotta grow out of it, so to speak,
Yes,
right?
pretty much.
Any other questions for Mr. Rutledge? All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Julie, are you presenting?
She
All
is.
right. I didn't want to assume, but
She's just here. Somebody just wants to spend her money tonight.
come to the board meeting.
Okay. Good evening.
good evening. Welcome.
How are you guys this evening? Glad to be here.
Good.
Thank you for having us. As we've done in the past, whether it's selling an actual series of bonds or kind of initial conversations that the district is, starting to talk about the next election, we're here to share a little bit of information about kind of some initial planning. This is definitely preliminary and initial information, and is not anything set in stone, and it's really a way to kind of start this conversation about what are the next capital priorities, what's the time frame on those capital priorities, and what is the capacity of the school district to sell additional bonds. So I let me say all this is preliminary.
No worries.
I'll give you a little bit of a market review right now. Really in the last several years, the market, the rates for municipal bonds have been wonderful. If you've been a seller, it's really been a seller's market. You've been able to get in and out of the market at extremely low rates, really regardless of whether you sold tax-exempt bonds or taxable bonds. Right now, the market is really focused on, as we grow out of COVID, what is GDP going to do? What is inflation going to do? So there are some pressures right now on interest rates, and watching to see what the Fed does to ease policy will be interesting to see. If you look here at the bottom right, you'll see really between 2020 and really at the beginnings of 2021, you'll see that the U.S. Treasury, yields rose really since last fall as we've been kind of growing out of COVID, and so there certainly is some interest rate pressure, and although rates still remain low comparative to history, they have been on the rise in the last several months. Interestingly enough, though, you'll see at the bottom left the MMD curve, which is MMD is like the municipal bond index. It's a group of bonds that trades on a daily basis, or they track on a daily basis, and this curve is really how we price tax-exempt municipal bonds when they're sold in the market. So if you'll see, the green bar is actually May of 2021. That's the current yield curve. May of 20 is that royalish blue line, and the 15-year average is that dark blue line up above. So, really compared to history, we are really at very competitive low rates. And you'll see on the right there the tax-exempt and taxable yields, the spread between that 10-year AAA MMD and the 10-year U.S. Treasury, still remains pretty tight. There has been some dislocation in that in the last few months, but again, really, right now yields do remain very competitive. If you're the seller side, you're going to still receive some really nice, tax-exempt rates in the market. So. This is more information about all that. So I included some recent history on school district bond elections just so that you all could see kind of how those have been performing in recent years. So there's a history there of the May and the November elections. I think at the very bottom it's a kind of graphically displayed what the May 21 results are. You'll see again that there was about $7 billion in elections, and that about 6.5 million passed, which was about a 92% pass rate. About 500 million failed. And as you may know, that the law around bond elections has changed in the last few years. There's much more transparency requirements around bond elections. You can't have like what we used to do, which was like one election that would be everything under the sun. So you now have to have a proposition for athletic facilities, really what I'll call competitive athletics facilities, the academic space, things like buses and technology really have to have their own proposition. And so we didn't track it, but the number of elections that failed this year, several of them were athletic propositions, right? So the district may have had 3 propositions and 2 of the 3 passed. And the ones that didn't, I think, were heavy athletic ones. So you'll see that on the right side, the propositions that were called were 109. The propositions that passed were only 86. So the percentage passage was 80%. So the numbers are lower than the par amount, right? But you would expect the par amount to be higher from on the academic spaces and things. So still strong passage rates. You'll see up at the top that the passage rates by number, passage rates by par do tend to be pretty strong here in Texas for school districts. So, I think it's not easy, but, it is still possible to pass elections. So, and here's where the list of the schools that had elections in May. So just from a comparative perspective, you can see who was doing elections and the size of those elections, you know, maybe the size of the school district and what elections passed and which ones did not pass. So. The district's outstanding debt profile, this is really just a summary of all the bonds that the district has outstanding, what their purposes were, how much of that debt is callable, what are the final maturities on those things. So this is really just a list for you all.
Question for you on the yields or the interest rate that we're basically paying. Once you set the bond, is that it's not a fixed rate? Is it variable to the market?
You can sell fixed rate debt, but the district you can sell variable rate debt, but the district has chosen to only sell fixed rate debt. So historically, our debt is fixed.
Okay, so we know what the interest payments.
We do. It is set for the life of the bonds. Okay. Municipal bonds traditionally are sold with a 10-year par call. So unlike your home mortgage that you can refinance kind of whenever rates go down and you're like, oh, there's some spread there, I should refinance my mortgage, municipal bonds really have one set call date in them, and it tends to be a 10-year optional call. So, and because of tax law change back in 2017, it is a little bit more difficult to refund those bonds. And refunding is like a refinancing of your home mortgage. We really take the outstanding debt, we replace it with cheaper debt, and we pay off that old series of bonds. That's really how our refunding works. Now, in order to do a refunding in advance of that 10-year optional call date, you really have to be able to sell taxable bonds. And we've been doing that for lots of school districts in the last 2 years. You guys did it back in 2020. We sold a refunding. We really sold it. We replaced tax-exempt bonds with taxable bonds and still saved you guys money. So it just all depends on where that called feature is in the bonds and how close we are to that call date. And then it can be attractive. So that's when we kind of can reset the rate on your bonds. But otherwise, when we sell the bonds, it has a 20 or 25 or 30-year set debt service payment. And, you know, it's planned for in the budget that way. So you can sell variable rate debt. The district just hasn't chosen to do that. This is really the profile of that debt. So these are the annual debt service payments kind of displayed graphically. And you can see, like, physically, if you look at these bar charts, right, the annual debt service requirement of the district is increasing a little bit in the first couple of years. It kind of goes down again in 24. That's really with a plan to layer in another series of bonds. And then it kind of goes up, and then it flattens out. And it's really at that flattening level, and then with those future step downs that we're providing for capacity in the future, right? So if you think about your TAV profile, the property tax profile of the district, you know, if you have $2 billion in TAV today and it grows to $2.2 billion and then it grows to $2.5 billion, you're going to have a higher tax base, right? So if your tax rate's 50 cents, you're going to bring in more money even if you don't increase your tax rate. Because there's just a bigger bucket that you're applying that rate against. And really that's how the debt profile has been sold over the last few years with an expectation of growth. So we really have an increasing annual debt service requirement to kind of work into that growth to keep you at that, what is now the 48.5-cent INS tax rate. And then we provide for some capacity to sell another series of bonds, an expectation that, you know, whatever we sold in 2019 was not going to be the last thing that you needed in the short term. So we really build the bond plan with this idea that between growth and kind of looking at where the capacity is in your annual requirement, that we provide you the ability to sell bonds in the future. Right? We structure the plan intentionally that way. The bottom chart is really the same information. It's just showing you the series of bonds and kind of how they got layered into the debt profile as we sold them. I also wanted to just share kind of a summary of the refunding transactions the district has undertaken in the last 10 years or so. It is, I mean, all municipal issuers do this. They actively manage their debt profile. They're looking for opportunities to save debt service. And so when we look at a refunding, we're looking at how can we replace the existing debt, the existing bonds, and sell new bonds, pay off the old ones, and save the district money. And so the district has undertaken, 7 refundings and 1 cash defeasance, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. And through those refundings, we've saved, $17.8 million in debt service payments. That's over the life of the bonds, right? So you didn't save $17 million in cash in that year, but you would have paid that in the future had we left the existing debt service outstanding. So, and a cash defeasance is where you guys really have cash, in the debt service reserve fund, or you have extra M&O cash, and you decide you're going to take bonds out that are currently callable. So bonds that today you're sitting on top of the optional call date, and it's really just cheaper to pay them off rather than refund them again and put them in a new series of bonds. And so we will do that occasionally when the bonds are here and when there may be an opportunity. Often districts do that to manage their tax rate. So if you have a substantial amount of growth and you could actually set a penny lower tax rate and you want to maintain it at 48.50, you could plan for a cash defeasance, take some bonds out, pay them off. You're not refunding them, you're really just paying off that debt, kind of like paying your credit card early. Same idea. And we did that back in 2013.
So where does that cash come from?
The cash that you save?
The cash defeasance.
It likely comes from your debt service reserve fund. So each year you're setting a tax rate. It's based on a TAV that DCAD gives us in August.
It's an estimate.
There's often adjustments to that TAV. There's penalties and delinquent taxes. There's interest that comes in, and so there's often what I'll call excess collections. I don't know if you want to call it that, but there's more that comes into the INS revenue than you really project in August, and that just builds up over time. And so when you have that cash, most districts have a certain amount of debt service reserve in the event that you would have some surprise in your TAV growth or things. But if there's an excess amount of that, districts will use it to manage their debt service portfolio, to bring down bonds, manage the tax rate that way. So
You're probably used to us calling it a fund balance. So the INS fund has its own separate fund balance, just like the general fund
That
does.
makes sense. Okay.
And so Julie helps us look at that and we say, okay, fund balance is at a rate greater than what we expected. Is there something that we can pay off early and save the district money?
Okay. Got it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see. So this is I'm just gonna skip this page. I'll go to this page first. So this is the initial bond plan. We visited with Dr. Wright and Liz last week, 2 weeks ago. Talked a little bit about kind of where the district is, what are some of the capital needs, and this plan is based on. Actually, I will go back. This plan is really based on. The idea that you would host an election, a May election, May of 2022 election, with the idea of selling or getting authorization for $133 million that would really cover 2 bond sales, one for $46 million in July of 22 and one for $85 million in July of 24. And the capital projects that were identified as being covered by this bond election are really a 4th elementary school, as well as there's about $6 million in there for buses and technology. And then in June of 24, the sale would be slated to provide funds for a 2nd middle school, as well as some funding for buses and technology. And again, these are not set in stone. This was just some guidance that we got as a starting point, as saying, is this possible? What does this look like? How does this impact our tax rate? What kind of growth do we need to be able to do this? And let me say, we don't set your capital priorities. You guys give them to us, and we say, can we do these? How can we do these? How fast can we do these? Right? So your INS tax rate right now sits at 48.50 cents. The last transaction we sold from the 2017 election was sold in 2019. We know you have growth and you have needs that are on the horizon, so that's what we're kind of planning for. So, your debt capacity, as I said earlier, is really structured to kind of keep you in that 48 to 50 cent tax range, while trying to provide, capacity for future elections. So this really means that as the district experiences growth, it has the ability to sell additional bonds, right? So that, and I say that right there, that the capacity is really derived from new rooftops and new businesses, right? As agricultural land is converted to developed land, the district's TAV is benefiting significantly from that, because ag land has very high tax, tax exemptions on it, right? And as you convert that ag land into rooftops, those individual homes don't have the same amount of tax exemptions on them. So that's where the TAV growth is really coming from, right? The districts, so when Liz sets the budget, she really bases that off of after frozen net TAV. For fiscal year 2021, the after frozen TAV was about 2.4 million, and 2.4 billion rather, I'm sorry, and it represented about a 13.5% increase over 2019-20. And historically, you guys have been in the double digits growth for about 5 or 6 years, right? Maybe even longer. For fiscal year 21-22, DCAT is really giving a little bit of a slower projection for you all. That has a lot to do with COVID, impact of COVID, and the slowing down of building of houses and a whole variety of things, I believe. And so we're now projecting only an 11% increase in the TAV going into 21-22, which is a little bit lower than we had been planning in the bond plan in the last several years. But it's, so we're just going to continue to work with it and watch it. As the budget gets set this summer, that may change. As we continue to see what happens, economically in the area, again, that you would maybe expect that to rebound a little bit after COVID and the economy starts to pick up a little bit more.
So the 11% you're projecting, that is two parts. One is actual valuation of the homes,
Mm-hmm.
but secondarily it's the number of
It's
homes.
the number of new
plays into
homes that have come
11%.
in,
Okay.
mm-hmm. and the value on any of that developed property. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's like our July date is what they're looking at after all the stuff is settled.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct. So,
Okay.
anytime, we start getting information in April, April 30th, I believe, this year, and then we get those updates along the way, and then of course our certified values, we share that with, Julie, and then that way she can update her numbers, because again, we're all just estimating based off historical values what that number may be. So right now, when we share the numbers with Julie, the 11% is what we're using for our budget, so that's what we're gonna use for the bond plan. That's, we may be close to 11%, but we'll know more in July. I really think it may be August before we get those numbers in this year, but, anyway, so that's what changes and makes things a lot of times preliminary, because she just has the numbers that we have, which are all, estimates at this point.
Right.
Okay.
And we really rely on DCAT for the current fiscal year because that we when you guys go to sell bonds, there are some tests that any school district has to do, and those tests are often based on your current certified value, right? So we're certainly watching what they project. We have conversations with DCAD. We review what the demographer has before you guys in terms of houses and developments, and what their projection is for the number of new homes that are going to hit the district over the next couple of years. And that's where we try to factor in all that information to look at the projections we put in the bond plan. And then we kind of marry that information, specifically with what's going on at the district with what we know is kind of happening economically. And so what does that mean in terms of what might happen to growth rates here, right? So it's a combination of really specific factors for the district, as well as, kind of more macro level factors that are out there in the economy. So,
Liz, do you guys look at like protest rates? Like how many people protest? I mean, you're talking about not having new houses coming as much this year due to the pandemic. But the property values, there's going to be a big argument. If you're selling your property, you're like, yeah, it's way up here until the taxes come out, and then no, it's way down here. So I just imagine that the protest rate that's coming up is gonna be significant.
It has been significantly, or I hate to say significantly, but it has grown over the past several years. And DCAD shares that information with us each year of how many active protests they have,
And
what
is
they're
that
expecting.
DCAT as a whole, or is in Argyle ISD?
It's DCAD as a whole, and then we get specific to Argyle ISD. So each week, we will get an updated number. So even Friday's numbers that were sent were different than what they sent the week before. And it will have on there what is the actual value that's not under protest, and then you've got values under protest, and then they've given us what they are figuring as a grand total. And so each week we get updated on where those numbers are, and then I believe there's a couple of week gap where we don't get any information where they're trying to finalize everything and getting to that 95% so that they can certify that to us. So they've got to be at 95% complete.
So all that's usually, or a good portion of it's settled by the August date.
It's supposed to be, but you know, this year things were harder. They had software issues, they had COVID issues, so things took a little bit longer. But yes, so they give us specific information, and we get general overall Denton County information as well. But we do get numbers on that each week. Once we get the end of April, that tells us how much is under protest, and we're looking at overall value. But they do share with us that their numbers have gone up. They're expecting their numbers to go up. You know, anytime the values are rising like they are, especially all over Denton County and here in Argyle ISD, there's going to be more protests than there have been in the past.
And if you couple that with, the economic stress that some families are under, they're definitely they're gonna, if they haven't in the past, they're gonna be applying, to try and modify those increases and, do what they can, right? So we would expect, in high growth areas to have higher, appeals, and then we would also expect oftentimes that with bond elections, people just have a heightened awareness around their TAV values, and there's a lot of talk about it, and so there's often, an increased amount of appeals as well.
Okay.
So, let me go to this slide. So this slide really looks at your history. The kind of royal blue lines are really going all the way back to 2010. What was the TAV value of the district? And so you'll see those first few boxes were small, so small I couldn't get the number in there. So, so where you guys have come and where you are as of 2021. And so the district's growth really in the last 5 years is that you've really almost doubled the value of the district in the last 5 years. From that 1.3 billion to the, I'm sorry, that 1.8, I can't read that very well, I apologize. Then you'll see the 21-22 value. That is assuming that 11% increase. And then in our model, we project the TAV out. Typically, we're doing anywhere from 5 to 10 years for a district. In y'all's case, we do project it out about 10 years. And you'll see at the bottom what our expected growth rates are, for the next couple of years. We did go down to that 11%, and then we're kind of going back up again in 22, 23, 24, 25. The number at the very bottom is really what that dollar change is in the district's TAV base. And so we're in that high 4, low 500 range. And then you get out there and we start to kind of decrease the percentage, but you'll see really as the district's base gets bigger, it's still over a $500 million increase in homes, right? New homes kind of have to come online for that growth to even stay at 12%. So,
so do you have our demographer's report too?
I do. I keep the demographer's report. I look at all the values.
Versus the actual percentages, because percentages you
No,
can't
I'm looking at his
maintain.
number of homes, the average value of those homes, and I'm trying to kind of do that. And then there's this amount that we kind of roll in that is the natural increase in all the existing properties. And so we do. We work with all that. Liz sends me the demographer's report every time they update it. There is often some timing issues around when homes actually get, built and when they get read into the TAV. There's a delay there, right? If you build a home in June, it's really not getting read into the TAV until that January. That is really a TAV read that's provided in July for the next fiscal year, right? So a home that's built in June really won't hit your TAV until almost 2 years later.
So would you consider this, from your analysis, on the conservative side or the aggressive side?
This is on the aggressive side.
Okay.
We've been on the aggressive side here. Your growth has been aggressive. Let's see if I have that. I don't know if I have the history as much laid out here, but your growth percentages have been aggressive with the mega developments that you have in the area, and you're not alone. There are several districts who are looking at 20 and 25% growth rates right now. They're in these rural areas where ag land is really getting converted, and that's really where you're getting that really substantial pickup from the new homes.
But aggressive conservative is a relative term, and I wonder if you're asking aggressive conservative in terms of Argyle, and because compared to
these
other
are
districts,
actually lower projections than we used to have for you all.
Okay, so this, it's probably more of a conservative.
This is a
standpoint
little
as
bit
far
more
as the
conservative
projections
than
for
where we
us.
had been. We had been even at 20% still for the next couple of years.
Okay.
And let me say, we have really dropped First Ranch kind of out of this profile right now because of the delays in that planning and uncertainties around when that's really going to kind of maybe hit your TAV. So this was really kind of done without contemplating First Ranch.
Thank you for the clarification, Regs.
So in this, and our numbers go really, the number for 2021-22 is more conservative than we had been. It's a little bit lower. I mean, that's really not a projection anymore. That's really working with DCAT on what they're, sending you all. But the next couple of years projections are lower than we have had in recent years. So, so then we just kind of look at what is the structure of the bonds going to be? What is the interest rate going to look like? In this case, they have the PSF guarantee, so we sell them with a AAA rating, and we really structure out the bonds. And so this is really the structure of your bond. So the left column, which is column B, is your existing debt service. And you'll see we kind of had 13 million, it goes up to 14. So that idea that those bar charts that were going up, you'll see that's that annual debt service requirement that's in column B. Column C is actually a proposed cash defeasance. We're working with Liz on including a cash defeasance in the budget for the fiscal year 22 INS budget. We don't have any bonds to sell. We'd like to maintain the tax rate at 48.50, just because it's cleaner for your constituents to kind of keep the same tax rate than to go down and then go back up again. And that's kind of a hard conversation to have, right? Hard to say, kind of hard message to share. So the idea is that if we can pull some bonds that are currently callable and defease them, you kind of add some capacity to later years and you reduce your debt service.
I'm sorry to interrupt
Go
you,
ahead.
but so column C is suggesting that for 2022.
2022.
What are the negative numbers below that?
Those are savings. So we're going to pull about 750,000 in debt that's not really due next year into 2022, and then you're going to save all that debt service down in the future, right? And part of it is you have a small series of bonds that did not have PSF on them that have like 5, and we refunded most of it. We couldn't refund the whole thing years ago, and it has maturities of like $5,000 and $10,000 and $15,000 out there, and it's not called. I mean, its final maturity is like 2040 or something. So if we can just pull that up front and get rid of it and pay it off. We can't really refund it because it stands alone outside of all of your other debt, which has the PSF guarantee, and we can't blend those in a refunding. So it's economically efficient for you all to take some cash out of your fund balance, the debt service fund balance, and just pay those bonds off next year.
What's a PSF guarantee?
So Texas has the benefit of a state, almost like a state insurance program. Years ago, the legislature set aside oil revenues and land that was put into a savings account that's called the Permanent School Fund Guarantee, right? And so districts in Texas can apply for guarantee on their bonds, and the PSF carries a AAA rating from Moody's and S&P and Fitch. And most school districts carry something below that AAA, right? Argyle carries a AA3 rating, So typically, much like a credit score, the lower your rating, the higher your interest rates are. The higher your rating, the lower your interest rates are. So we sell your bonds with both the district's underlying rating as well as with enhancement from the permanent school fund. So they really sell with a AAA credit rating on them. And that lowers your cost of borrowing. So you have access to that. All school districts in Texas have access to it. There's only a few that have a AAA rating. And I'm not sure anyone has AAA ratings from all 3 rating agencies. So almost every school district in Texas takes advantage of the PSF when they sell bonds. And it's something that there's not a lot of other states that have it. So Texas is really blessed, here. And your bonds are bought by the largest institutional bondholders. All of the Texas PSF paper is bought by the largest institutional bondholders because they like the PSF rating. So it's really helpful to your cost of capital. Columns D and E are really the planned bond sales, that $46 million and that $85 million that I talked about. You'll see we kind of just structure those in. It's really got mostly level debt service except for a little tweaking at the front end. So we just roll that into your, existing debt profile, and then that column F becomes what's going to be your projected portfolio, the projected debt service profile of the district.
So you have the 4% on column D for next year in July. And I know the interest rates are going to go up because of inflation going on right now, but what's our current interest rate?
The current interest rate on like a 25-year bond for PSF is probably in the high 2s. We really do this plan with pretty conservative interest rates because we can't project where they're going to be next year, or particularly as we go farther and farther out in a bond plan. And so we really are doing them at pretty high interest rates, overall. And bonds are really sold in serial maturities. So unlike your home loan, which the entire loan is sold at a coupon rate, bonds are sold. The 1-year bond is cheaper than the 10-year bond, which is cheaper than the 20-year bond. But your overall interest cost, the blended interest cost for the whole transaction is kind of what's up there. We would really expect it to be in the high 2s right now or the low 3s. So we build this with cushion. It's got about 75 to 100 basis points of cushion. And the next one has about 150 basis points of cushion in it right now.
That was gonna be
and
my
that's
question.
intentional.
Okay.
We want to, when we get to the bond sale, what we hope is that we come back to you and your all-in TIC is in that 3.25, 3.20 range. So, and what that allows us to do is then either
It's more capacity, right?
Yeah, it gives you it keeps you, it's less debt service, or we can shorten the structure, we can sell more earlier. It just gives you some flexibility. So we're conservative at this point. We're really early on in these conversations. As we get closer to the bond sale, the plan gets kind of closer to current conditions. The next couple of columns are really some of the offsetting kind of revenue sources that we think about. As I said, we budget based on after frozen TAV. That's leaving off the people who are in there, who have the senior exemption, right? Because when you hit that status where you can have your senior exemption, you pay a certain amount of taxes. It's not really a tax rate that's applied to your property anymore. It freezes your tax bill. And so we can't really just say, well, that whole piece of property is going to pay 48.5 cents. It's not. And we don't know the detail on every house and where their tax bill was frozen. So we really budget based on after frozen, and then we roll back in the estimate for what the district receives on the debt service side of that frozen levy revenue. So it's a revenue number we throw into the bond plan. There's other available revenues like delinquent taxes and penalties and interest income. You have an INS fund balance that we occasionally will strategically use to kind of hit your tax rate target. And then depending on when we sell bonds, if it's during a year or if we just need some capacity in the first year of a bond sale, we will wrap in what we call capitalized interest. You're really bonding for a portion of the first interest payment. And again, that's conservative. We would hope when we get there we wouldn't have to do that. But at this point, I was trying to keep you at 4850, and so we've just planned for that in the bond plan. So the rest of it is really just kind of the numerics behind the assumption. What is our TAV? You'll see that growth in the TAV that we had on the previous page, and then that column N is really telling you what we would estimate your INS tax rate then to need to be in order to do these bond sales. So
you might be doing this in the next slide, but then what would our capacity be above and beyond what this, if we did this bond?
So if you look, if you went to the full 50 cents, which is really the capacity, right? It is an unlimited. When we sell the bonds, they are unlimited tax bonds, which really means there's not a limit on the tax rate that you could charge. That's the security behind the bonds. But practically, you have to pass a 50-cent test with the Texas Attorney General's office that says you can pay your debt and not have a tax rate above 50 cents. And so really there is this kind of limit on your INS tax rate of 50 cents. And so that's really that's where you could go. So if we were to add, you can probably add another 5 million to these sales and get you to 50 cents next year, or in 23 rather. And then we're really using your capacity for the next couple of years, right? If you can see, if we're keeping you at 4850, the way to have more capacity would be to grow more. You'd have to hit 20% growth. Now you'll see that dark line in there at 27, we're dropping your tax rate. So that's where you would be able, like in 26, to sell bonds again, because we're stepping the tax rate down intentionally so that you can wrap in another bond sale, and we're giving you 4 or 5 pennies of capacity, and so that you can have it. So that's intentional, and then just the bonds, the tax rate just kind of declines as you go out, right? So it's really all of that stuff after 27 is where you have capacity.
So just to break this down, hidden in this, or maybe not really hidden in this, is the idea that we would have a bond sale next July and another one in 2026.
July
24.
and then 24. So you'll see up at column D is that we would sell bonds in July of 22 for about 46 million. And then in June of 24, we would sell another 85 million in bonds.
My mistake. I saw that. What I was asking about is where you have that.
Oh, the
line
next
over-
election?
Yes.
Yeah. That would be in 26.
26.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Thank you.
Unless you were to grow more. If you were to grow 20% and, there would be more capacity, then you could have that election earlier. So.
And you can drop the tax rate because you have more TAV.
Yeah.
To keep you kind of at a
And
working
we're,
level.
we start to decrease your debt service cost. We start to lower your debt service obligation.
Okay.
Right. So we do start to intentionally try to get the bonds paid off earlier, or structure the bonds so that there's less debt. You'll see the bonds, we would now be taking you out from a 2049 final maturity to a 2054. Where that last series in 24 would be a 30-year series. Well, that, 5 million out at the end that's the only debt you have out there. You don't have any other debt out there. So your annual requirement out in 2050 is only $5.5 million versus the $22 million that you have in, the next couple of years. So the tax rate is going down because of growth, and then because there's just less debt out there in the far end. So again, preliminary analysis. I know that the needs are greater than these two facilities, but in the short run, we wanted to see what we could do. If we were to just do a smaller election and in the next couple of years, right, and then plan. Kind of like, instead of the mega election that some districts have had at times, where they sold 500, 600, 700 million in bonds, expecting to sell them over 10 or 15 years. That's one way you could go, or you can go this way, where you're kind of thinking more like smaller elections, and you're going to have them more frequently. So It's just
The
a fil-
frustrating thing is, you know, the trend being interest rates are gonna go up potentially to offset this inflation, and secondarily, then the prices are gonna go up, and so you almost want to borrow money now.
Based on the very first chart you showed with the rates where they are,
Mhm.
you're better off to go.
Yeah, to get, if you can, right.
You gotta get
Sell
all
as
you
much as
can
you
now.
can now while
Exactly.
rates are low, right.
I mean,
And also build now, because the prices to build is gonna be
That's true.
much higher.
you know, you've
Right.
covered a lot of information.
It is a lot of
right?
information,
But
so.
there are there's some good tidbits in here, and there's a few folks in this around us who like to make claims about the district's solvency and where we're going, and there's a lot of facts in here that just flat out refute that. And I think we have to use some of those facts, and we have to start making, I know this is public, see all the people, right? So we have to start talking to them where they are,
Right.
right? And we have to start using some of this information
Mhm.
to dispel those that want to have their own narrative
Right,
that they want to push. It has nothing to do with, they're just using the district to do it.
right.
So, I don't really know what I'm saying other than
I do know what
we
you're
need
saying.
some of these points to be brought out and to be communicated.
Yeah, and we're happy to do that. I mean, we're happy to be at any, public setting, I know as you guys
Although that I
begin
would
to
ask
get
you
the,
to do
the
that.
pub, the
I wouldn't
committee.
subject you to that.
The committee
Down to
together.
one fancy slide.
Yeah, well, can I distill it down? It's hard to distill down to one fancy slide.
Give me like 10
I
or
have
so
had
bullet
some people
points I
ask
could
me,
use.
can they just raise the tax rate to whatever? I said, no, they can't do,
Yeah.
If you set a tax rate above 50 cents, the next time you try to sell bonds, you have to pass a 45-cent tax rate ceiling with the AG's office. So, even districts like Prosper, when they got in trouble, they didn't go above 50 cents. When they had oversold their bonds and they didn't have the growth, they restructured debt and they maintained 50 cents. So, I mean,
And what you
it's-
have right now, haven't touched 50 cents.
We're not
yet.
even there yet.
We're basically
I
staying the
mean,
same.
that last call, or the,
Uh-huh.
not the last column, but the column of the tax rate showing it's going down.
It's staying at
And it's
48,
been that
50,
way
and it'll go down,
every
right.
year that I've been
Okay.
sitting here looking at these, right?
Right, right. And if you did nothing
can't
today, I mean, if the district did nothing, if they sold no more bonds, if your growth stayed just kind of modest, 7 or 8%, your tax rate, it would go up a little bit because that's the way the annual debt service requirement was built, was on growth. Go up a little bit, but it would ultimately start going down. So if you did nothing else, the tax rate would go down. But then that presumes you have no growth. You'd have no more students. They all work together, right? The growth, the number of students, the capital requirements. It's a puzzle, and you just got to kind of try and fit the pieces together in a way that the best way you can. But it's not easy by any
At
means.
the top of your discussion, you were talking about what was passing and what was failing, and a lot of times it was athletic facilities. Is that where bonds, did they actually split them up that way?
That you are now
Absolutely.
required.
But what I'm saying is, if you take that same thought process for the total size of the bond, is it, I know you've said it a couple of times, but do you recommend the kind of pay as you go or bond out as you go as opposed to these mega bonds that
I think
in terms of passage, the success of
yeah,
passage?
it is really very much a philosophical reflection of that district, right? So some districts have, I don't know how to say it. Some districts just have been able to do that. The districts that have really large bond plans in here. Sorry, I'll go back to some more pages. Are large districts. We're
This is a good example on that page.
yeah. Melissa's. How does much? I don't even.
They had 400 million.
Right.
They're hitting a lot of growth.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like we are.
I guess what I'm asking from your point of view,
400
who
million.
deals with so many districts, if we can learn from the mistakes of others, just in terms of passing the bond,
Right.
you would say what?
Passing an election is really all about defining those capital needs and communicating that vision for the district in a way that really gets buy-in from your constituency. There is not a formula that's necessarily perfect, right? A small election, big election, it really is a reflection of where your constituency is. And You know, if you have a good defined bond plan, if you've engaged, you know, a committee of, you know, it's not just the board members, but a broader committee to really look at options and alternatives, you have that kind of grassroots effort of people behind those needs, that's absolutely critical. But every district is experiencing some of this anti-government, anti-debt, anti-taxes. Oftentimes it's not even their constituents that are perpetuating those messages. I mean, we're seeing that across the board, right? So you have to kind of prepare for that, as you said, and kind of, you know what those nuggets of information are that can kind of counteract some of those messages, right?
He said it. I mean, it's communication. Right?
It is.
It's over communicating. It's throwing those nuggets out there now a year in advance, and we've been talking about this, but we've got to start doing it because
it's a year from now.
it doesn't take. It takes a longer time, and that year will be here before we know it.
Right.
Next May will be here.
Right. I mean, the 2017, you guys hosted more, you know, in-person, right, bond presentations. Dr. Wright, you couldn't count them how many times you were in front of people and the opportunity people had to come and ask questions.
Some of those bond presentations were well attended, like at Harvest and Canyon Falls. But then we had several at the high school for anybody in the community who wanted to come. By the end of that, there just weren't many people showing up.
But in all
I
fairness,
think Mr. Devenbaugh said he was the only one that came one time.
I mean, in all fairness, the well-attended Harvest presentation, they didn't turn out to vote though.
Well, they weren't registered. Remember?
Get that.
Right.
I'll tell you, we have learned a lot about virtual communication.
Yep.
They're gonna have to do a lot of that, though.
We just saw one tonight, so we can create bond packages.
Right,
show,
right. We've got, in the 4 years since that bond, we've come a long, long way as far as like you said, the virtual presentation.
The information you can present, the method by which you deliver it, the depth at which that information can be shared electronically is, I mean, it's light years ahead of what it was 5 years ago. So I do think all that stuff is critically important. It is communication. It is communication.
We'll still need to have bond presentations.
Yep.
But
there's multiple ways you can supplement an in-person presentation
you can really get the
these
information
days.
out, though.
You can.
People will really look at the electronic transmission as much or more than they will a face-to-face presentation.
Right. I'm guessing, I haven't seen Melissa's bond plan, but I'm guessing that's a 10-year bond plan for them. 8 to 10-year bond plan, that they'll sell that $400 million. That's substantial.
How many years do you think it is?
I bet it's an 8-year bond plan. They'll sell it like over, 4 sales, maybe over, a year, about every other year or so. And then I'm looking, like, I know Cleveland's failure was an athletic facility.
Do you know what Northwest was?
I don't. I'm gonna have to go look and see what that one was.
And they passed $700.
I think it was renovations
Stadium
to the
renovation.
stadium. It was athletic.
He said athletic.
To the non-mega state man, it was to the.
Really? So that's it. Is that the only thing that did not pass out
Yes.
of the litany of?
This
That's
time.
an interesting.
It
This
didn't
time.
pass in
$750
November,
million
but this
bond.
Gonna
time,
have to sell.
everything passed but the renovation on the stadium.
On the stadium. And I know for a fact that the proposition that failed at Cleburne was a renovation of their historic stadium, and that didn't pass. Garner, the smaller school districts really struggle at times to pass elections. It's a small number of people that can really, sway the vote. I don't know about Hayes. Hayes was a stadium as well.
What about, do you know Waxahachie at all?
Like in 2007.
I don't know well.
They had a couple elementary schools, some land, and a lot of renovations.
Yeah. My guess is that the constituents just didn't like the plan in its entirety, because that's an entire bond, that's the entire proposition, that's their entire bond plan, so. Sometimes there's not enough communication, sometimes it's not done enough in advance, there's, sometimes they just have an audience that's just really not, I don't know how much the Hatchie has raised their interest rate, their tax rates rather in the last few years. I don't know what's going on in that population necessarily to indicate why that one may not have passed, but.
So how have you found that school districts have been able to counteract the bold letters of this is a tax increase on your bond proposal?
Yeah, because you now have to do that because if you didn't have an election, it would be a tax decrease. I think it's really all about maintaining that tax rate, right? You're maintaining the 4850. Then with this, you can maintain the 4850. You're not having to increase it. You guys may decide you need to go all the way to 50 cents. If you want more and you really want to go to 50 cents, you want to go to 50 cents. I mean.
But even though they're reading that on the ballot.
They are reading it on the ballot. Mm-hmm. But most districts will still speak to the fact that they can roll in this next election and hold the tax rate steady. Let me put it that way.
It's just hard when they see that, sadly.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think it goes back to communication.
Right.
So, when we're out there communicating to people in the community, we have to say that. You're going to see this on the ballot, and here's what it means.
Right.
Here's why it has to be there.
Right.
So.
All right.
Anything
Thank
else?
you, Julia. Appreciate
You got
it.
it.
That was great. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Stieber, you have a pre-K textbook adoption action item. John.
So it's time to adopt pre-K curriculum, textbooks, and so we have chosen Scholastic, and it's a cost of $14,500. It will be out of IMA money, so it's not an impact on the budget or anything. But since it's a new proclamation, a new textbook adoption, we need your approval.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13A as presented.
I will make that motion.
Mr. Deffenbaugh, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to give that to Dr. McDade. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
We need to get Greg to make us a tote board.
Well presented.
And you've got the next one?
Would be as easy?
Yes.
I think so. So we are requesting, before we file a waiver with TEA, we have to have your approval. And so we are requesting a waiver to limit the number of foreign exchange students. It would be for the next 2 years to a number not greater than 5. So we want to take foreign exchange students just with our growth and space and things like that. We want to limit it to no more than 5.
First come, first serve?
Correct.
What is it now?
What is it now? Yeah.
It's unlimited now.
Okay.
What do we have?
We didn't have any
None
this year.
because of COVID,
definitely
but
this year you
we have
won't.
2, I think, 3 for next year right now.
Okay.
So this is dealing with the agencies because they have to know there's a cap, or how does that work? How does that get implemented?
What did it say that?
Like
What do you
the
mean?
limit of 5. Do they know they have like 2 or 3 agencies that
You apply
get
for a
kids over
waiver.
here. Do they get your pre-approval
So yes, they have to have approval before
from
they.
the ISD?
Yes,
From us.
correct. Yeah. So once we hit 5, we will cut it off.
I mean, so in the past, prior to COVID, has 5 been around the number? Has it been 10? Has it been?
I said 3 2 years ago.
On some years between 5 and 10.
How many?
Are we required to take foreign exchange students?
Some years 5 to 10.
Unless we have a waiver, yes.
Yeah, I think we had 8 for sure.
So if people apply, it's
I
as
know
long as
I
they
had
meet
two
the
of them.
requirements.
We can put guidelines in.
I said I know I had 2 of them.
They can what?
These companies know if we have the waiver or not, so.
Okay.
So we can implement guidelines. Like it has to be from a reputable company. But yes, you have to take them, and but you can set a limit.
So just a quick question, is that 5 total at any one time, like you already have 3?
No, it's 5.
it's each year?
Well, so for this year,
Okay.
so this coming year, it's 5 from the 5 more from the moment I get it filed. So if we have 3, we would would have to allow up to 8 next year.
Okay.
Okay, so it's 5 from the moment I get it filed. So then for the 22-23 school year, it would just be 5.
So some exchange students just come for one semester. So
They're not allowed to come for one semester.
Okay.
I mean, unless they come and leave,
I've
you know,
had
without
one.
approval,
I'm just
without our,
saying. You
just
but
broke the rule.
I
the
didn't break
plan
the
for them
rule.
to come is for 1 full year.
Right.
So we would, knowing ahead of time, we would not approve someone for a semester.
Okay.
This is just based on space limitations that we already
Yeah,
have, right?
it's just a capacity issue, that's the reason for this.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13B as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Lowry, second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, 13C, board meeting dates for the upcoming board season.
It's basically like.
Right, these are just the dates for the 21-22 school year.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13C as presented.
I'll move that we approve action item 13C as presented.
Dr. McDade, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Williams, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Liz with the budget amendment.
Okay, this budget amendment is strictly for the next agenda item for the vehicles that are gonna be recommended. So we wanted you to see the money
Where it's coming.
and what would happen to the budget first. So, like we talked about last month with the budget amendment where it was, an increase in our overall revenue due to the hold harmless, from the state of Texas because of COVID this year. So, we have more revenue than what we had planned. The purchase that's being presented, it's, and Mr. Rutledge will present that next, would be $353,000. And so we aren't presenting any revenue to offset that other than revenue we've already added into the budget. So it would still leave us at a surplus budget, projected budget of $340,000. And this would be all M&O funds is what we're recommending.
Now, the budget numbers for revenue and expenses, the actuals today, do you think they're gonna end up, because there's such a huge discrepancy right now, or disparity on both the revenue side and the expense side? And I
Correct.
just fear we're not gonna get all the revenue side. What are your feelings on it?
So our revenue, if the current taxes were close to being at you know the end of our budget on that, that's because of the timing of when those come in. So we have a much smaller amount of that, and we did lower that projection, but the offset was to increase the state. So our state revenue still does have quite a bit to come in, and that's that settle up process. So we get paid based on estimates that were put in place at the beginning of the legislative session, and then we actually estimate earning the funds based on our current data. So we may not actually receive that revenue until a sell-up process that comes through over the next year period, but we've earned the revenue. And we feel very good about what we're earning and what we're projecting on earning the revenue. There are some smaller areas in there that we're going to come in under and a couple that we're going to come in over, but overall, we should hit our mark on
So
revenue.
you're pretty comfortable we'll make up the discrepancy on what we've already received.
That's correct.
And I know you're comfortable in the expenses, they'll make up that discrepancy, right?
Right, our expenses should be under. Now, there's always what we have, where this is gonna fall. Always, what we have at the end of the year, what we bring in August, where we bring you the, one larger budget amendment typically, and it's for our August accruals. It's for all of our staff that have started the school year, and we've got to record it in this year. Same thing, we bring it on the revenue side for all the student days where we earn that revenue in this fiscal year, but it's, for the next school year, just happens in this fiscal year. So we will have still that revenue, and we may have a couple other smaller amendments, but I do feel very comfortable about our revenue estimates overall at this point. And the two largest portions of those are, of course, the property taxes, the local property taxes, and both of our foundation school program and our per capita apportionment for the state funding.
Any other questions?
So I hate to even bring this up. If those dollars we were talking about earlier, I mean, it's almost this exact amount. You could apply that back to bond funds and pay for these out of bond funds and repay this M&O, right? It's
So
a
you're-
lot of movement, I know.
Yes,
but-
so you're talking about on the ESSER 3
ESSER
funds.
3.
And paying for these, what we're recommending next out of bond.
Oh, that's
Is
coming
that what
out-
I'm following?
It's already coming out of bond. I thought this was coming out of M&O.
This is coming out of, I'm making
Right.
sure I'm following your
So
question.
if we
Thank
if
you.
we submit on that one project and they give us the 300,
Correct.
right? We've just put 300 back in bond.
That
Can't we
is
then
correct.
buy these buses out of bond and put the money back into M&O, and then we're not?
I would have to look into the legality of moving this purchase back to
See, I
bond
was
later.
told, okay.
The one that you're asking about though, the project that we've already completed,
Mhm.
that we're considering for an ESSER 3 funds, yes, I believe that wasn't a question and answer that was addressed today. That is a possibility.
Okay.
But I don't know exactly on the follow-up end of that of, approving this out of M&O today and moving that
Moving
back
it
to
later,
bond
yeah.
later.
Okay.
I would have to ask our bond attorney on that.
Okay, sorry. That's my only question.
Can you go back one slide?
This one. The second page has the bottom line. The first page just has the revenue, and the second slide has the expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
They're broken down by function, and then the overall balance at the end of that. And as y'all know, the 340 is not where we'll end up. That's just the projection. If we spent every dime in the budget and we brought in every dollar, that's estimated. There's several areas that we're trending lower on expenditures. There's a few that we're trending maybe potentially a little higher that we'll have to look at and adjust and keep watching. But there's some areas that we're going to trend a little lower too. We try and budget very conservatively on the expenditure side and make sure that we fall in underneath those expenditures. So.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13D as presented.
I make a motion that we approve action item 13D.
Mr. Lowry, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. McDade, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Are you staying for the next one?
The next one is yes. I am going to have this next one. Before I drop that and have to cause a repair.
Well, there's a laptop quote on the next action item, so.
I'm going to try and stay off that quote.
Okay.
Okay, and Mr. Rutledge is here for this one too. Come on back up, Mr. Rutledge. He did. I hate to take this away from him. He did all the work on this, so I know they've worked really hard on this. And again, they've been talking to us about this and bringing this up in the 3 to 5 year plan for a long time about the need that we're getting to the point of the aging fleet. So again, he presented his replacement schedule. This isn't everything off the replacement schedule. These were just the things that when we met as an administration, we felt that these were the 4 biggest needs that did need to be replaced. It's 2 regular buses. Are they 76 passenger?
77.
77. I got close on that. And then 1 wheelchair accessible bus, and then 1 Suburban.
And the other repair costs just come out of your normal budget, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, and to speak to what Mr. Hawksworth said earlier, also these obviously have updated seat belts.
Yes, the
versus
alternative seat belt,
the buses that are
Yes.
being retired don't have the
They do not have seat
shoulder
belts,
belts,
no, sir.
so yeah.
They were not mandated at that time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anyone have any questions for Mr. Rutledge or Liz? Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13E as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Dr. Bitter, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hawksworth, second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Now it gets heated.
You can use that for the summary. Yeah. So per the number of new positions to the district, from Chris Daniel, we need 49 laptops, and I have 50 here just in case something comes DOA. So these are laptops just for positions new to the district.
Do we do all
Max.
all teachers do max now? We don't do any.
Yeah, the only thing outstanding is the middle school campus, which will be the last campus for replacement, which will be next in our cycle.
And they're moving from, they have PCs, and they're going to Macs.
That's what the refresh has been on all the teachers. So.
Yeah, we're through 4 refresh cycles now with the Max.
And you're still convinced that I've been looking for PCs or computers for my daughter, and you're convinced now the Macs are worth the extra price, especially for the role they're being used in.
Just for teachers on this action item.
Yeah, I like.
Yeah, just for teachers on this action item.
I like that you say extra price, because if you actually spec to spec compare them, the MacBooks come out cheaper than an equivalent Windows laptop. And we have seen less service issues with them. I mean, everything's rolling very well. We have more control of the devices.
Because the sites I'm seeing are $500 I can go buy right now. So
But are those Chromebooks or?
Okay. So we've converted. You're seeing this about the same price as the PCs we've had in the past.
Comparing to the equivalent models, if we look at Dell's, which we've traditionally bought Dell's one on the PC side, it's more expensive than this.
Okay. Any other questions for Greg? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13F as presented.
So moved.
Dr. McDade, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Williams, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you. Okay.
My next one.
Yes.
Okay, so we have looked at usage at both the middle school and the high school campus. And interestingly enough, the middle school campus usage is higher than the high school usage, but with the structure addition to the building being so large, we do have to add additional copiers. And Liz and I have talked about this back and forth. When funds are available, it makes more sense to buy the machines rather than leasing the machines, and then all we have is service on them. So this would be for the addition of up to, I believe, 3 additional machines for phase 2 locations.
So do we own some machines and lease some machines?
We own 2 right now. I believe I think it's the one here, and then it's the one at the field house. It's 2 machines. Ever since switching from Xerox, we have had all kinds of problems with Xerox. When we quoted it out to get pricing, Xerox, Canon, and Ricoh, the Ricoh machines were less than half the cost. But since we've moved our contract to Ricoh, I would say we've maybe only had 20% as many issues as what we had when we did have the Xerox machines. So we've had really good luck with them. They are cheaper to buy when we have the funds available, so it makes sense.
So you buy a service contract with it or something?
Yeah, so we own the machine, but we put service on it for toner repairs effectively.
Is it like you repay it each year, or is it a 5-year program? Or?
It's so much per copy, I believe.
Yeah. Each machine has its own cost associated with it, depending on how efficient that
So that's the
machine
way
is.
they monitor usage, right? They can tell if you.
So this is just for those 3 additional machines.
I'll entertain entertain a motion to approve action item 13G as presented.
I'll make the motion to approve 13G.
Dr. Bitter, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Mr. Deffenbach copies. Dr. Bitter. All right. Any further discussion?
It's 9:30, you said.
All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Yeah, you do.
Okay.
You do. I'm sorry. All right, Dr. Wright, is this you?
Yes,
All right.
13H, yes.
I'm asking for you to go ahead and allow me to post the job for South Elementary for it's a fall of 22, but the way we did this at West, we actually had an in-district applicant that moved from intermediate to West and for 5 months worked between the two campuses, and that worked out really well. So I'd like to go ahead and post that because there's so many things that come up, like the FF&E acquisition and staffing changes between Hilltop and West. So I'd like to post and interview for this job. If it's an internal applicant, the person would still have their regular job. If it's an external applicant, then that is another discussion. We wouldn't need the person all year. The impact in the 2022-2023 school year would be about $90,000. It could be a little less, it could be a little more, but probably not more. That's probably the upper end. So all I'm asking is to post the job, select the principal, and pay a stipend for the extra work from March to June. So that's my request. To go ahead and, it's just to go ahead and post the job. It's not to hire anyone today, it's to post the job and look at applicants. Are we good with the stipend? I mean, budget-wise and all that? That wouldn't be paid until March of 22.
Okay.
Or February of 22.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13H as presented.
I move we approve 13H as presented.
Mr. Williams, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hawksworth, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Okay. This is Dr. Ruggles' action item. Actually, we did some comparison between the company we've been using through the co-op and a company he's been using out of Houston, AISD. So, Dr. Ruggles.
Yeah, so basically the School Health and Related Service Program, it's like a bridge between school districts and the Health and Human Service Commission for the state, which administers the Medicaid insurance program for individuals that are low income or have disabilities. And so through the SHARS program, school districts, when they provide certain special ed services to students that have Medicaid, those services being like speech therapy, occupational therapy, etc., you can actually get reimbursed from Medicaid for to cover a portion of the cost of providing those services. So it's basically accessing that student's benefits. Of course, we only do that with consent of the parent. You know, we don't access anyone's benefits without the parent's consent. So that's the good news. The challenge is that medical billing and health insurance is a very complex thing, and we're not typically in that business. And so every district I know has kind of a vendor that specializes in this and provides the software that you need to be able to kind of participate in this program. So the Denton County Special Ed Co-op, their vendor has been managing this for us. As we kind of untether from them, we'll need our own vendor, and I think the recommendation is to go with the one that has been providing our service through the co-op for a couple reasons, cost and just familiarity with with the software, it takes a lot of time and effort to get people trained on new systems and such, so.
Do they just take a percentage out of the reimbursements, or what's
That's
the-
correct, yep,
Okay.
yep.
And how is their percentage versus other vendors?
They're about, they're the same. Most of the companies are pretty close, you know. Some are a little higher. I think the TNG is just a slight higher on one side than the Houston company. However, the Houston company has an administrative fee that you pay that the TNG company does not have. So it's all kind of, you know, it all levels out. Right.
What do they take? Is it 20%?
Oh no, it's only it's at around I don't remember exactly 5%. So
Yeah, it's not that much.
right.
And is this a annual renewal on this agreement, or is this like, can they adjust the rate on you, or?
That's a good question. Yeah, so I think the contract is for a year, right? So I think it does come back.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13I as presented.
I move that we accept 13I.
All right. Mr. Deffenbaugh, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Lowry, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Dr. Ruggles.
Liz again.
Okay, Mr. Daniel couldn't be here tonight to present this for you, so we're gonna try and get this as best we can, but we did, several of us did serve on the RFP committee and review everything, and we're in all of the discussions. So our custodial services contract has been with ADM for several years. We were on our where you could renew it once a year or every year for so many years, so it was time to come up for our RFP again. We did issue that out. We had quite a bit of interest up front. We had 15 companies come to our mandatory pre-bid meeting, and then we had 9 submit responses. And so we felt like we had a good range of companies. We had a good response rate. Several were competitive. Several were quite a bit off in their cost. But when we went through all of the ranking, because it's not all just cost, we did look at several other factors. The committee did come up with ADM as the top company again. So that's what we're recommending, is to renew this 1 year at a time. We don't want to lock ourselves into a 5-year agreement, but have the option to extend it for 5 years after that, 1 year at a time. They did have the lowest cost, and kind of in comparison of what we've been paying, it's about $67,000 higher than this year. However, we are adding quite a bit of square footage, so when you look at the cost of this year versus next year, if the square footage were the same, it would be very comparable. It's just the addition of phase 2 coming on board, which is quite a bit of square footage for cleaning. So that's our recommendation, is to approve this for a 1-year contract with the option to extend each year for a total of 5 years. So.
Does that increase include the weird negotiated rate we had with the COVID shutdown, or I guess I'm just trying to say, is the increase really that high, or is it technically lower?
That we had, because we had that negotiated rate.
Yeah.
Trying to remember that negotiated rate. I know we went through that whole conversation of.
It wasn't that much different, but it was still something. It was a little bit less, and so I was thinking maybe the increase isn't that much, but.
Right.
I believe I'm sorry. They were also doing more services as a result. So does this include those that same level of service, or are we cutting back?
No, we are not continuing some of those services. And some of those services were at additional cost outside of the contract too. So this is our typical day-to-day normal custodial services.
But day-to-day, it's not day-to-day though.
Comparable contract to comparable contract at $65,000.
That's correct. Right. It's well, 67 and some change, about 67 and a half. But square footage, price, was very comparable, because that's how we have to break it down while we're adding
Sure.
square footage, is look at it at cost per square foot. It also, they did put some local incentives in their contract, I believe. They put it in 75,000 to give back to the district that we can use towards our bill if we want to, or towards, custodial equipment or whatever it is that we may want. But they did add that in, as part of their, submittal.
How
to the
does that
RFP.
work? They just
They've never offered that before. That has not been in any of their contracts that they'd offered before, so that was an additional amount that they offered on this. And they did put in there that we could choose to use that against our actual just contract cost.
We ask them for best and final price.
So does that mean it's
So that
less
could
than the
t-
eight?
yeah, that could-
Yeah, that means it'll
that
come
could
down
wipe
off
that
of that
down
quite a
by
bit.
75,000.
But this is the actual cost that as it was presented. So that's what we would need to approve.
And it could
But
be a mix of equipment and reducing
Right.
the bill.
reducing the bill if we find the need that we do need those additional services,
Yeah.
something along those lines. But we did include some lines in there that we did not have in the past to help with the electrostatic spraying will be standard, that we can continue that. That's included in what we call the standard now, rather than add-ons because you had something happen. So we wanted to, looking back after having to go through the preparing for COVID and dealing with COVID, we wanted to make sure that our contract moving forward did encompass some things that we didn't feel that we had to look for historically, but now we do. So
What-
I'm a believer in this third-party contracts, let them deal with it, so this is a good contract. But as we start building more buildings, which I heard we're gonna have to, we might wanna consider having our own custodial staff, hire a manager to manage all that, but
right.
you could probably end up saving some money and
We-
having more control.
We've mentioned it. We haven't gone as far as to what I would say is really
Yeah,
drill
that's
it down and look at the, go through the process. We've looked at it at just an overall
Yeah.
level.
But if
Staffing
you-
is a really
If you
big
look at
concern,
if you
just
look
like
at
it
5A districts, what's the norm? Just like owning your own,
Bus fleet.
buses
Right.
versus,
Do they service
they have
out
Right.
here?
contact, they have
Yeah.
contract custodial
Quite a few
by
of them have
March.
contract, and there are some areas when you get into some of the staff there. We've struggled in the past. We have struggled with bus drivers and filling all those roles. We have struggled with our cafeteria staff, our student nutrition staff. And when you contract, they're required to fulfill that for that certain price. So there's good and bad on both sides, but it is something we've got to look at moving forward.
The other thing is controlling the quality of work. I mean, in general, you've been happy with the quality of work that this company has provided?
And
there's
what
also a high
what
turnover
happens?
rate in those
There-
positions, and that's something that would
Right.
be
Let them
the
worry about
cost.
that.
Yeah, the cost of turnover is huge.
It's a lot
That-
of headaches.
that is
Hire the
correct.
manager
You have to keep
first.
training new employees.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
what happens when we add on the administration building
Premium.
in the
We
spring?
have a price per square foot that we would
Okay.
need to come back then and adjust the
Edit.
contract and ask
Okay.
you for an addition for.
Okay.
But because we don't know exactly when that will come on, we are not asking for that at this time. It's only the ones that we know will be online
Okay.
at the time that, when September comes around. So,
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13J as presented.
So moved.
Mr. Hawksworth, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Dr. McDade, second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you. Wow. Getting a little punchy
Okay,
over there,
this
Doc.
is, can you open the resolution? Okay. We have, CB local that governs our, ability to apply for grants. And we need this resolution in order to be able to complete our application for the ESSER 3 funding. And I'll go over it piece by piece. So on the 28th of April, TEA notified school districts of the opportunity to apply for their allocation of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief 3. It's called ESSER 3 Fund, which should be used to respond to the pandemic and to address student learning loss. as a result of COVID-19. Whereas TEA published guidance regarding how these funds can be used and local compliance requirements and school districts must follow, including a recommendation that districts develop local policy to address how the district will provide the required public notice regarding federal grants and awards for consistency. Whereas Texas Education Code 11.151 gives the Board of Trustees the exclusive power and duty to govern and oversee the management of the public schools of the district. And whereas the board finds that a need exists to adjust local policy provisions to address public notice for federal grants and awards and approval of required grant plans, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Argyle ISD adopts the following text for inclusion at CB Local. That's your local policy right now, and this would be included. State and federal revenue sources. The district shall provide public notice of federal grant applications through an information item at a board meeting and by publishing information on the district's website. The district shall make available opportunities for public input as required by law or the granting agency. So that means exactly what it says, that we'll be providing public notice, that we'll be putting information on the website, and that we'll be asking for public input. Approval of required grant and award plans shall be by the superintendent. So this is a change or an addendum to CB Local, and it's effective based on the adoption date of this resolution. So in order for us to complete our application and turn that in, we need to have this resolution approved, but we will be doing the things that are listed here, including community input. So I'm requesting approval of this resolution. This was recommended, this resolution came from TASB too, so it was recommended by TASB.
I'll entertain a motion to approve action item 13K as presented.
I move that we approve action item 13K as presented.
All right, Mr. Lowry, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Yes, second.
I'm going to give it to Dr. Bitter because he whispered it. Dr. Bitter, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, for the board members and Dr. Wright, we are going to adjourn to executive session. The time is 9:39. All right, the time is 10:41 p.m. We have returned from executive session. This time I'll entertain a motion to approve action items as discussed in closed session.
I'll make a motion that we approve action items as discussed in closed session.
Mr. Lowry, motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Yes. Second.
Dr. Bitter whispered second in my ear. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously, 7-0. It is 10:41 p.m. We are adjourned.